The galaxy trembled. The once unstoppable empires were now shattered by the unrelenting power of Earth's warship. The ghost of Earth had become a symbol of terror, a weapon feared by every race, every council, every fleet that once looked down upon humanity. But for Commander Lyra Voss and her crew, the mission was far from over. They weren't just fighting to survive anymore. They were fighting to take back what had been stolen from Earth. The Council had already begun to react. They knew that the humans, once vulnerable and broken, were now a force that could not be ignored. Desperate messages were sent to their fleets, their spies, their allies, but it was too late. The humans were unstoppable, and their warship was an impenetrable nightmare that devoured everything in its path. As the ghost of Earth moved through the galaxy, Lyra and her crew prepared for their final strike. Earth's message to the galaxy had been clear. Abandoned, but never weak. Every planet they destroyed, every fleet they crippled, was a reminder that the Council had failed humanity. Now it was time to deliver the final blow. The Verdan Empire had been the first to fall. Now the target was set on the heart of the Council itself, the central world of the Idrath Collective, an ancient race whose vast knowledge and technology had made them one of the most powerful in the galaxy. The Idrath had been one of the first to abandon Earth to its fate, one of the first to scoff at the idea that humanity could rise again. They would now pay the price. Lyra stood on the bridge of the ghost of Earth, looking out at the fading stars. The Idrath Collective was within reach, but their defenses were stronger than anything they had faced before. Lyra had calculated their every move, studied their tactics, and prepared for every countermeasure. This time, it wasn't just about striking fast and silently. It was about delivering a message that would echo across the galaxy. She turned to her crew, her voice steady. Prepare for the final strike. We hit them hard, we hit them fast. No hesitation. This is our last message. To the galaxy! The crew nodded, their faces set with determination. For them, this wasn't just a mission. It was the culmination of everything humanity had fought for. Earth had been abandoned, forgotten, and ignored. But now, they were the ones who held the power. The galaxy would never forget what they had done. A hum filled the air as the ship powered up, its weapon systems coming online. The ghost of Earth was a deadly weapon, an entire planet's worth of destruction compressed into a single, unstoppable force. The Idrath Collective's defenses would be tested, but Lyra knew they wouldn't stand a chance. The ship was too advanced, too fast, and too deadly. Outside the ship, the stars seemed to blur as the ghost of Earth hurtled toward its target. Lyra's hands gripped the control panel, her mind focused entirely on the mission ahead. The crew moved, in complete silence, their training taking over. Every member knew their role, every movement was precise. There was no room for error. As they approached the Idrath homeworld, the Idrath fleet began to move into position. They had expected a fight. After all, they were the galaxy's most advanced military force. They were prepared for a war. What they weren't prepared for was the ghost of Earth. With a single command, Lyra gave the order. Launch! A flash of light. The shockwave from the first strike rippled through space, striking the Idrath flagship with devastating force. It exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Within moments, the entire fleet was in chaos. The ghost of Earth had moved faster than any of them could react, and their once impenetrable defenses were useless. But it wasn't just about destroying the Idrath fleet. It was the message that Lyra and her crew were sending. The galaxy had thought humanity was weak, but Earth had proven them wrong. With every planet they destroyed, with every fleet they shattered, they were showing the galaxy that they were no longer to be underestimated. The Idrath homeworld itself was next. Their cities, once considered the pinnacle of alien civilization, were now reduced to rubble. The ghost of Earth moved like a shadow, silent but deadly. Every strike was calculated, every move made to ensure the maximum damage. Back on Earth, humanity watched from the shadows, their hearts swelling with pride. They had suffered for too long. They had been abandoned by the Council, left to die, and yet they had risen. Now the galaxy would learn that humanity was no longer their prey. They were the hunters. The final strike hit the heart of the Idrath. World. The city's central core, where their leaders resided, was obliterated. The planet shook as if in its death throes. The once mighty Idrath were nothing now. Their empire was in ruins, their fleets scattered, their leaders dead. And the ghost of Earth? It was already gone, moving into the darkness of space once more, leaving behind only silence and destruction. For Commander Lyra Voss, there was no triumph, no celebration, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that humanity had taken its place in the galaxy. The message had been sent. The galaxy had been warned. Humanity was no longer weak. They were no longer the prey. They were the galaxy's greatest threat. And no one would forget it. The silence that followed the destruction of the Idrath Collective was deafening. For days, the galaxy held its breath. The Council, once confident in its dominance, was now questioning its future. The events of the last few weeks had shaken the very foundation of galactic power. The once forgotten humans, abandoned, underestimated, and left to die, had risen from the ashes, and now their wrath had scattered the most powerful empires across the stars. The ghost of Earth, an unstoppable force, continued its journey through the galaxy, leaving a trail of devastation that no one dared to follow. Its power was absolute, its purpose clear. The message was simple. Humanity would no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. Back on Earth, the survivors watched in awe and fear as their warship tore through the fabric of the galaxy. They were no longer hiding in the shadows. They were the predators now. Lyra Voss stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the data feeds. She was no longer just a commander. She was the symbol of humanity's vengeance. Every fleet they had destroyed, every planet they had shattered, was a reminder of the suffering that had been inflicted upon her people. But now, it was their turn to make the galaxy feel that pain. As the ghost of Earth moved deeper into uncharted space, Lyra received an encrypted message. It was from the Council, a final plea. The message was simple, but its weight was heavy. We offer peace. The galaxy is tired of war. The galaxy will not survive another attack. End this, before it's too late. Lyra stood in silence for a long moment, considering the offer. Peace. It seemed impossible after everything that had happened. The lives lost, the cities destroyed, the betrayal of those who had abandoned them. It felt like too much. Peace wasn't an option for her. It wasn't an option for humanity. She composed her response, sending it out across the stars. Peace is a luxury that the galaxy cannot afford. You had your chance, and you abandoned us. Humanity is not your tool to use. We will decide our future. The message was simple, but it carried the weight of every human who had died, every survivor who had suffered, and every enemy that had fallen before them. The galaxy was stunned. No one had expected this kind of response. The Council, once so confident in its ability to control the galaxy, was now on the defensive. The greatest empires of the galaxy, who had once seen humanity as nothing more than a nuisance, now feared them. Their fleets were scattered, their alliances in disarray, and their will to fight crumbled in the face of Earth's unrelenting warship. The humans were no longer just survivors. They were the galaxy's new rulers. The ghost of Earth had become a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when pushed to the brink. But the question remained. What would they do with this newfound power? Lyra stared out into the vast emptiness of space, her mind working through the possibilities. They had the power to reshape the galaxy, to rebuild it in humanity's image. But at what cost? Could they afford to let their thirst for revenge cloud their judgment? It wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was about ensuring that humanity would never again be abandoned. They had to be the ones to shape their destiny. But the choices they made now would determine whether the galaxy would burn in the fires of their anger or whether they would rise to create something greater. Back on Earth, people spoke of a new era, an era where humanity would no longer be ruled by the Council or any alien empire. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the human race. They would be the ones to decide what came next. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The galaxy would never forget what humanity had done. They would remember the fall of the Yggdrath, the destruction of the Verdun Empire, and the arrival of Earth's warship. And they would remember the most important lesson of all. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's prey. Humanity had become its worst nightmare. The galaxy had been warned, and now humanity would take its place as the new rulers of the stars. The ghost of Earth drifted silently in the void, its sleek, shadowy form barely detectable by the highest tech scanners. The galaxy was on edge, unsure of what was coming next. The Council remained quiet, not daring to acknowledge the human warship. But fear was growing. And the Council's enemies, the alien empires that once looked down on humanity, began to take notice. The ship's first mission had been a warning, a message that burned across the sky. But Commander Lyra Voss knew it wasn't enough. Warnings only worked if the enemy believed them. And right now, no one believed humans had the power to back up their threats. That had to change. Earth's enemies needed to understand something. Humanity wasn't begging anymore. They weren't weak. They weren't just surviving. They were coming for revenge. Lyra stood in front of the warship's massive control panel, her fingers running across the cold surface as she gave the order to engage. "Target acquired," the ship's AI, named Ares, whispered in her ear. The AI's voice was calm, efficient, and devoid of emotion, just like the humans who had built it. "Enemy fleet in range. Weapons primed." Lyra's eyes narrowed. In front of them was the Azkoth Empire, an aggressive species known for their brutal tactics and endless thirst for conquest. They had been one of the first to mock Earth, dismissing humanity as weak and primitive. They had laughed when the Krixa attacked, believing the humans would fall in mere days. Now the Azkoth Empire was in range, and it was about to learn the true cost of underestimating Earth. The fleet was positioned in a defensive formation around one of their capital planets, Zorax. They had no idea what was coming for them. The Ghost of Earth was not just a ship, it was an embodiment of humanity's fury. Its weapons were unlike anything they had faced before, the power of 1,000 suns in a single shot. A precise strike that could obliterate entire fleets in an instant. "Prepare for launch," Lyra ordered, her voice steady as the warship's massive weapons powered up. Each cannon was linked to an AI system that could track and eliminate targets with deadly precision. There was no room for error, no hesitation. Lyra turned to face her crew, small, but all equally determined. They had seen the destruction the Krixa had wrought. They had lived through the endless years of waiting and watching, waiting for the chance to strike. Now was that moment. "Send the message," Lyra commanded. In the depths of space, the ghost of Earth vanished, cloaking itself in perfect silence. To the Azkoth Empire, it was as if the ship had simply never been there. No warning, no time to react. The first shot hit their lead battleship in the heart. The blast wasn't explosive. It didn't burn like a fire. It simply erased the ship from existence. 1 second, the Azkoth battleship was there, and the next, it was gone. Nothing remained but a small, silent void where it once had been. The shock waves from the strike rippled through space, but there was no sound, no scream of defeat, just the coldness of space and the death of the enemy fleet. The Azkoth didn't even know what had hit them. Their defenses failed in an instant. Their ships, once proud and untouchable, were now floating husks, destroyed, crippled, and abandoned in space. The ghost of Earth had done what it was built to do. It made its presence known. Lyra stared out at the destruction, her face expressionless. There was no joy in the victory, no celebration. This was not a conquest. This was justice. "Activate the next target," she ordered, her voice calm. The Azkoth capital was in ruins and they were already retreating to their homeworld. But Lyra didn't stop there. She wasn't here to make a statement. She was here to erase every trace of their underestimation of humanity. "Next target acquired," Ares responded. "Coordinates locked." Without a word, the ghost of Earth cloaked once again and disappeared into the darkness of space. No fleet saw it coming. No warning, no chance to defend. The fear spread quickly. The remaining Azkoth ships scattered, unsure where the next strike would come from. They had no way of knowing the ghost of Earth was watching them from the shadows, waiting to strike again. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity had been abandoned once, but it would never be weak again. The Council had ignored them. The aliens had laughed at them. Now they were terrified of what humans could do when pushed to the edge, and in the cold, dark silence of space, one thing was certain. Earth had returned. The ghost of Earth was more than a weapon. It was a reminder, a warning to every empire that had ever thought humans were easy prey. Humanity was no longer a victim. It was the predator, and it was hunting. Across the galaxy, whispers of humanity's actions spread like wildfire. The ghost of Earth's destruction of the Azkoth fleet was just the beginning. The power of the human warship was unlike anything the galaxy had seen, and its silence made it even more terrifying. The message had been clear, but the question echoed in every council chamber, every imperial war room. What would humanity do next? The Galactic Council, once so certain in their dismissal of Earth, now sat in a tense silence. Leaders from dozens of alien races sat in the High Council chamber, their faces tight with fear. The reality had finally set in. Humanity had returned, not as beggars asking for help, but as a force with the power to destroy entire fleets with a single strike. They could no longer ignore what they had abandoned. Counselor Tan, a Zorvian, leader with silver-blue skin and cold eyes, was the first to speak. "We underestimated them," he said, his voice full of barely contained anger. "The humans were supposed to be weak, easy targets for the Krixa. Now they've made the whole galaxy tremble." Another counselor, a tall and imposing Solarian with violet skin and multiple eyes, leaned forward. "We must act before they destroy everything we've built." Counselor V, a silent observer from the Xanthi Empire, remained motionless, his mind racing. His people had no love for the humans, but even they could not ignore the power they now wielded. He glanced at the others, feeling the weight of the decision upon him. "We ignored them once. Now we will face the consequences." Tan growled, his sharp teeth visible as his anger flared. "The Council abandoned Earth, and now they've made the first move, but we can't let them continue their rampage. We must send a fleet, something that will crush them once and for all." Another voice, calm and measured, interrupted. It was Counselor Dazar, a wise being from the Litheron Federation, known for his level-headed approach. "We have underestimated the humans for too long. They are not what they were when we first met them. If we strike now, we risk a war we may not survive." Tan's eyes narrowed. "Are you suggesting we negotiate with them? After what they did to the Azkoth fleet? Negotiation will not stop them. Fear is the only language they understand." A hushed, Silence fell over the council chamber. The truth was undeniable. The humans had demonstrated something the galaxy had never seen before. Not just power, but precision, and the terrifying ability to strike without warning. The ghost of Earth had turned the once peaceful space lanes into a battlefield. And now, the galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for the next move. Meanwhile, the crew aboard the Ghost of Earth was already moving on to their next target. Commander Lyra Voss, ever calm, stood on the bridge, staring out at the swirling stars ahead of her. She had received the Council's silence, loud and clear. There was no longer a need for words. The galaxy was learning to fear the humans, and Lyra had only one purpose now: make them regret ever underestimating Earth. Her fingers slid across the smooth surface of the ship's control panel. A new target had been selected: the Verdan Empire. The Verdans were known for their towering warships and their vast, unrelenting conquests. They had expanded across the galaxy with arrogance, believing themselves to be unstoppable. They had also been one of the first to mock Earth's destruction, claiming the humans would never recover. Now, their empire was next on the list. Lyra turned to her crew. "Prepare the weapons. We move fast. Silent." The ship's AI, Ares, spoke. "Weapons charged. Target in range." Lyra's eyes never left the stars. The Verdan Empire had no idea what was coming for them. Their defenses were strong, but they weren't prepared for the weapon they were about to face. The Ghost of Earth was not just a ship. It was a nightmare waiting to be unleashed. With a deep breath, Lyra gave the order. "Engage!" The Ghost of Earth vanished once again into the darkness of space, moving with terrifying speed and precision. No one saw it coming. No one heard the strike. It was swift, clean, and completely devastating. The Verdan flagship, a massive beast of metal and firepower, was the first to fall. One shot from the Ghost of Earth's weapon was all it took. The mighty ship was reduced to a floating graveyard in the blink of an eye. No alarms, no warnings. Just the silence of space, the same silence that haunted every empire that dared to ignore humanity's power. Lyra stood, staring out at the aftermath. The Verdan fleet scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. Their once imposing defenses were shattered, their pride crushed. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. "Next target," Lyra whispered to herself as the Ghost of Earth faded into the darkness once more. She didn't need to speak to her crew. They knew what was coming next. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's weakness. Now, it was time to make them all understand one simple truth. Humanity was no longer their prey. The Council was right to be afraid. Earth's warship was a ghost, a harbinger of fear, and it had come to reclaim its place among tea. The sky above Earth had once been filled with stars, satellites, and hope, but now it burned red with the fire of falling cities, not from a war between humans, but from something far worse. An alien force no one had ever seen before had arrived, without warning. They didn't speak. They didn't ask. They simply destroyed. They were called the Krixa, monstrous, silent predators that tore through buildings, ships, and people like paper. Their ships were black like night, their weapons cold and unfeeling. Earth's defenses fell in days. Human leaders did what they always did in desperate times. They called for help. They sent messages to the stars, to the Galactic Council that governed dozens of powerful species. The Council had promised peace, unity, and protection. Humanity had joined them in good faith, believing that when danger came, they would not face it alone. But when Earth's message finally got a reply, it wasn't help. It was a single sentence. Humanity is no longer our concern. The message came cold and official, without emotion, no reason, no warning, just abandonment. It hit harder than any weapon. Every world leader sat in silence. Every child, soldier, and scientist who saw that message knew one thing: no one was coming. Earth was alone. The Krixa swept across continents like a wave. Major cities fell one by one. New York, Beijing, London, Cape Town. Billions died. People screamed into radios that no longer worked. Families tried to escape in ships that never made it past orbit. The lucky ones made it underground. Deep bunkers, old military bases, forgotten mines. The unlucky ones became part of the red sky. Among the survivors, anger began to grow, rage mixed with grief. The council had abandoned them. The aliens showed no mercy. But deep in those dark places beneath the earth, humans began to plan. Scientists carried what they could. Engineers used scraps of broken satellites and wrecked ships. Children who had seen death too early picked up tools instead of toys. A silent promise was made by every survivor. Never again. As years passed, Earth looked dead from space. The Krixa left after the destruction, finding no more life to consume. The Council marked Earth as a dead world in their records. They didn't look back. But under the surface, the truth was very different. Secret war factories came to life. Hidden bunkers turned into labs. AI systems, once used for agriculture and weather prediction, were reprogrammed for weapon design. Every memory of the burning sky became fuel. They called it Project Revenant, a plan not to rebuild Earth for peace, but to prepare it for war. Not out of revenge, but out of survival. The next time someone came to destroy them, Earth wouldn't call for help. It would be ready to answer with power. No one spoke of peace anymore. The Council had shown that peace was just a lie spoken by those who didn't want to fight. Humanity had learned the truth in blood and fire. Power was the only shield that worked in this galaxy. Years turned into decades. Children born underground grew up knowing only darkness and the dream of one day returning to the surface. They, trained in combat, science, code, and strategy. They didn't learn about peace treaties. They learned how to make a warship disappear without a trace. Their minds were sharp, their eyes cold, their mission clear. Above them, Earth remained silent. No signal was sent, no ship left orbit. It was as if humanity had truly died. But in reality, it had only gone quiet, very quiet. And in that silence, something terrifying was growing. Something faster, stronger, and smarter than anything the galaxy had seen before. Humanity wasn't weak anymore. It wasn't forgotten. It was watching. The Council had abandoned them. The Krixa had tried to wipe them out, but they had failed. Now, in the cold steel halls of underground facilities, engines began to hum. A new kind of warship was being built. Not a fleet, just one. One was enough. It didn't need to be seen. It didn't need to be many. It needed to be feared. And when it finally left the Earth, the stars would remember what the galaxy had forgotten. Humans do not forgive. Humans do not forget. They rise, they evolve, and they return. Years passed in silence. Earth, once full of life, was now dark and cold from the outside. No signals came, no ships launched. The Galactic Council marked the planet as lost. They moved on, never thinking about the humans they had abandoned. But under the ruined surface, deep in the hidden cities and bunkers, humanity was not dead. It was changing, evolving, preparing. The old governments were gone. What remained were united under a single purpose: survival through strength. The weak had been wiped out. Only the strong remained. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and strategists worked together day and night. They didn't waste time on hope. Hope had died when the Council turned away. Now there was only action. In a hidden facility called Black Core, the heart of Earth's new defense beat louder every day. It was buried deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, completely undetectable. It had no name in records, no lights on the surface. Not even the Council's finest sensors could find it. That was the point. Inside, humanity's brightest minds were building something the galaxy had never seen before. A warship that could destroy planets. A ship built not for defense, but for fear. This ship was not made from ordinary metal. It was fused with nanoalloys harvested from fallen Krixa ships. It moved like it was alive, silent and fast, powered by a quantum core that bent the laws of time. It could vanish from scanners, reappear behind enemy lines, and unleash devastation before alarms even triggered. Its name was Ghost of Earth. It carried no colors, no flags, just a symbol, an empty circle, painted black. As construction neared completion, elite human squads trained non-stop. They used simulation pods to learn alien strategies. They studied every Council fleet blueprint, every Krixa movement, every mistake humanity had made, and most of all, they trained to work in silence. The new human doctrine had one rule: speak less, strike fast. Commander Lyra Voss was the first to be chosen as captain of the Ghost of Earth. She had survived the Krixa invasion as a child, hiding beneath the rubble of a collapsed hospital. Her parents died calling for help that never came. Now, she was the Council's worst nightmare in human form, calm, brilliant, and completely unforgiving. In her final briefing before launch, she stood before the hidden command council. Her voice was clear and cold. Humanity begged once. That won't happen again. We are not here to ask. We are here to show them what happens when you abandon Earth. No one cheered. No one clapped. This wasn't a moment for celebration. It was a moment for quiet revenge, for remembrance. The day the warship launched, the stars above Earth were silent. No one outside saw it rise. It didn't roar. It didn't glow. It simply disappeared into the void. Its first mission wasn't to attack the Krixa. It wasn't even to fire a shot. It had a different goal: to be seen. Quietly, it entered a Council-protected system. It flew through their defense fields, invisible and unstoppable. It passed over a major Council capital, Telvaron Prime, and left behind one message, burned into the sky above the planet's surface. We remember. That message spread like fire across the galaxy. Who had done it? How had they bypassed? Every layer of defense? The Council sent dozens of scouts. None returned. The fear began to grow. Whispers spread. Is it the humans? But the Council said nothing. They didn't want to admit the truth. They had no idea what was happening. Back on Earth, the survivors watched quietly. Their war was just beginning, and the Ghost of Earth had delivered the first warning. No one had died. No weapon had fired. But across a dozen alien empires, fear was rising faster than any fleet. In the darkness of space, Commander Lyra Voss stood on the bridge of the silent warship, eyes fixed on distant stars. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply gave the next command. Next target. Let's make them remember more. The galaxy had forgotten the strength of humans. They had laughed at Earth's weakness. But now, from the edge of forgotten space, the Ghost of Earth moved again, not to speak, but to show them what fear really meant.